Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at, well, a real flashpoint moment in Nepal. A single day of protest that just exploded.
Absolutely. We saw the prime minister resign, the federal parliament actually set on fire. Incredible scenes.
And it all seemed to start with something digital, but quickly turned into something much bigger. This wasn't just about politics as usual. It feels like an example of, deep economic anger meeting the digital age head on.
Exactly.
We've gathered all the sources we could find detailing how incredibly fast this all happened, the tragic death toll, the immediate political chaos, and the reasons bubbling underneath. And our goal here is to really unpack how what looked like a bureaucratic move registering social media apps somehow became the spark for, well, regime change driven by Nepal's Gen Z.
Yeah, fascinating connection.
Okay, so let's dig into this unbelievable chain of events. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli resigns after this day of just unprecedented deadly violence. So what exactly was the immediate thing that set it all off?
Well, the very first action, the trigger, it was quite specific, almost technical. But the impact, immediately political. The government brought in this sweeping ban.
Sweeping how?
On 26 major social media apps. We're talking the big ones: Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, X, the platforms people use daily.
26. That's basically cutting off the main way young people communicate and get information, isn't it?
Pretty much their entire digital world, yeah.
So why? What was the government's official line, the administrative reason?
Officially, it was about compliance. The government had these new regulations. Commentators often called them quite burdensome, requiring foreign social media companies to register inside Nepal, follow local laws.
Okay.
He slapped a 7-day deadline on them. And when most of these huge international firms didn't or couldn't meet it, the government just pulled the plug, banned them.
So the message was, hey, this is just rules and regs. But for young people, the ones living online, it felt like something else entirely, right? Like a deliberate attack.
Oh, absolutely. It was immediately seen as a direct attempt to shut down criticism of the government. I mean, think about it. You suddenly block the main way a whole generation talks, organizes, shares news.
Yeah.
That whole bureaucratic argument just falls apart, doesn't it? They didn't see it as a registration issue. They saw it as censorship, pure and simple.
And the reaction wasn't gradual. It was instant and tragically lethal. The speed of the escalation, especially the death toll, is just staggering.
It really is.
Our sources are confirming that on that first Monday alone, 19 people were killed. Hundreds more injured in those initial clashes.
And the way the government responded is absolutely key here. Amnesty International went public, confirming security forces used live ammunition on protesters.
Live rounds.
Yes. That level of violence just instantly upped the stakes. It turned what might have started as a protest about digital rights into this life-or-death struggle against state brutality. Even the UN stepped in, demanding a quick, transparent investigation.
Okay, now here's a really crucial detail, something that could easily get lost in the timeline. The government, seeing this deadly chaos erupting, actually tried to backtrack.
That's right. They quickly rolled back the social media ban, the very thing that started it all that same Monday night.
And this is the key part. The sources are crystal clear. Lifting the ban did absolutely nothing to calm things down. Why not? Why didn't that work?
Because by then, it was too late. The movement had already surged past that initial trigger point. It wasn't about getting back on Facebook anymore.
Right.
It was about the 19 people who died. It was about the government using lethal force. So the movement, which people quickly started calling the Gen Z protests because so many young people were involved, just kept going, defying nationwide curfews.
So that shift tells you the digital ban was just the final straw, the thing that broke the camel's back.
Exactly. Once the state revealed its willingness to use deadly force, all those deeper underlying frustrations just boiled over and took control.
And the defiance became incredibly symbolic, incredibly intense. We're not just talking about marches anymore.
No, far beyond that. Thousands of protesters actually stormed the federal parliament building in Kathmandu, the very center of government power. And they set it on fire.
Those images, the sky over the Capitol just black with smoke. It shows this wasn't some calculated political protest. This was raw, chaotic anger, a rejection.
Definitely. Riot police trying to push back were getting pelted with stones. It was a direct assault on the institutions themselves.
And you mentioned the anger was targeted.
Very much so. They weren't just hitting random government buildings. They specifically went after the homes of the top political figures.
Like who?
Prime Minister Oli's residence was attacked. President Ram Chandra Paudel's home, too. And they even managed to overrun Singha Durbar, That's the main government administrative complex, the Lion's Palace.
Wow.
That's where most ministries are. The leadership had to be evacuated. So the protesters effectively shut down the government, both symbolically and functionally.
The sheer force of that violence. Well, it certainly got the immediate political result, didn't it? It forced the resignation. But if we just stop there, if we only talk about the ban and the fires, we miss the real story underneath.
Precisely. The ban was just the fuse.
So here's where it gets really interesting. The sources are showing that the real fuel for this fire, the deep energy source, was years, maybe decades of anger about corruption, chronic corruption, and political favoritism, nepotism.
That is the absolute crucial background. You have to understand the economic situation. Nepal's been wrestling for years with political instability, very slow economic growth, and really high unemployment, especially for young people. There's this profound feeling of just no future there.
Which forces people out.
Exactly. Huge numbers of Nepalis, often the brightest and most driven, feel they have no choice but to go abroad for work. They're basically giving up their lives at home because the country can't offer them a decent livelihood.
And that hardship makes the contrast with the ruling elite even more painful, right? The sources stress this wasn't hidden corruption. It was right there, out in the open.
Very visible. There had already been a series of big, high-profile corruption scandals in the news.
But what really seemed to hit a nerve with this Gen Z movement was the visual aspect, the social media angle.
Yes. Social media, ironically, became the place where the extravagant lifestyles of the politicians' children were being exposed. You know, the fancy cars, the overseas trips.
Right, the very platforms they tried to ban.
Exactly. And seeing those images, that kind of luxury spending, well, you yourself are struggling, that visibility just poured fuel on the fire, made the resentment incredibly personal, incredibly visceral.
It's the difference between hearing abstract numbers about corruption and seeing, Instagram posts of someone's kid on a yacht.
It makes the hypocrisy impossible to ignore, especially when you blame those same elites for your lack of opportunity.
And we hear this exact anger coming through in the quotes from protesters on the ground. It's not just about economics in general. It's very specific, very personal.
Absolutely. Listen to Naresh Rawal. He's 27. He was out there protesting, you put it perfectly, criticizing leaders for getting Land Rovers, bullets, and millions of rupees.
Wow.
His focus was totally on that visible wealth. And he asked this really pointed question. They don't drink regular water. They have cartons of imported water. Where did all that luxury come from?
That detail, the imported water, it says so much about the gap, doesn't it?
It really captures that disconnect, that feeling of us versus them.
And another protester, Rukshabam, 26, she tied it all back together, the corruption and the digital crackdown.
Yeah, she made a powerful point. She said that instead of dealing with the corruption that had, in her words, permeated every level of the country, the leaders chose to shut down the civic space of our generation.
That phrase, civic space of our generation, it explains exactly why lifting the ban meant nothing by that point.
Right. The issue wasn't just not being able to post photos. It was the government trying to take away the one space they felt they could actually speak out, organize, and criticize.
So it was years of economic frustration finally colliding with this immediate threat to their voice. The pressure just blew.
The lid came right off the political system.
Okay, let's track the political dominoes falling then, because it happened incredibly fast. Prime Minister Oli, he's 73, a longtime political figure.
Durable veteran.
He handed in his resignation early Tuesday afternoon. That's less than 24 hours after the killings on Monday.
Less than a day. It was incredibly swift.
And his official reason was interesting. He said he resigned to, quote, facilitate a solution to the problem and help resolve it politically.
That phrasing. It sounds like he saw his departure as sort of a tactical move to restore order, maybe more than admitting fault for the deeper issues.
Maybe. But whatever the phrasing, it was definitely a reaction to the pressure from the streets, wasn't it?
Oh, undeniably. And the government was already starting to crack before that. The Home Minister had quit Monday night over the violence.
Right.
So the whole cabinet was basically collapsing. It showed the Gen Z movement had, well, effectively forced regime change in just one incredibly intense push.
And the protesters, the ones who were literally gathered outside the burning parliament building, how did they react when they heard Oli was gone?
Cheering. Huge cheers. It was instant validation for them. They put their lives on the line, defied the curfews, and the head of the government had stepped down.
Yeah, even with Oli out, the sources say the chaos didn't just start, which backs up your point that this was bigger than just one leader.
Exactly. The unrest continued. It got to the point where Nepal's army chief, Confirmed troops were being deployed Tuesday night from 10 p.m., specifically to maintain order.
The army had to step in.
Yeah, and the Army's statement was telling. They mentioned groups taking undue advantage of the extraordinary circumstances causing damage. So while the immediate political target was gone, that broader disruptive energy was still very much present.
Which means the focus is shifting again, isn't it? From just getting a resignation to demanding real accountability, especially for the violence.
Absolutely. Justice for the 19 killed is now front and center. You hear from people like Tanuja Pandey. She's 24. She was forcefully demanding a criminal investigation.
She used strong language.
Very. She said, this is not just the death of 19 youths, it is murder. And she insisted the government couldn't escape accountability this time.
There's a real sense of determination, almost confidence, coming from these young protesters in the sources. Like they know they've changed something fundamental.
They definitely feel it. Rohan Ansari, 20 years old, tragically his friend was shot dead in the protests. He stood outside the parliament and basically declared victory. He said, today, the Gen Z movement has succeeded.
Wow.
And he promised the next phase would be youth-led, and crucially, he vowed, the files of their corruption will be exposed. They see this as just the beginning of holding people accountable.
And it seems like the establishment might recognize this shift, too. The president reaching out.
Yes. After Oli resigned, President Paudel invited the Gen Z protest leaders for talks. That's a significant signal, isn't it? It shows the traditional political powers now have to deal with this new, powerful force that operates outside the usual structures.
And they intend to stick around.
Seems like it. Kathmandu, 31, was quoted saying their movement won't just stop here, that they won't let the energy and courage die in vain. The resignation was just one step. The bigger goal is cleaning up the whole system.
So, synthesizing all this, what this deep dive really highlights is this incredibly clear chain reaction. You have a seemingly small bureaucratic issue, the social media ban.
Yeah, the trigger.
That suddenly becomes the release valve for years and years of pent-up anger. Anger about real economic pain, lack of jobs, and maybe most importantly, seeing the elite's corruption flaunted online.
Right on the very platforms they tried to shut down.
Exactly. And when a government tries to silence that last space for exposing injustice and organizing dissent, well, the collective energy of a generation that feels ignored can erupt with enough force to bring down a government, almost overnight.
Which brings us to a really critical question, something for you, the listener, to think about as Nepal tries to figure out what comes next. We hear these young protesters, full of conviction after their victory, vowing this movement won't fade away, that they're aiming for real, long-term change. Now, Ali said he resigned to resolve it politically, but how does a movement born in the streets, a movement that literally burned down parliament, actually translate that raw power into lasting institutional reform, especially when the institutions they need to change are the same ones designed to protect the very elites they just challenged? How do they make that leap from street victory to effective, sustained political power? That's the huge challenge facing them right now.